When I leaned in to join the family photo at my son's wedding reception, my daughter-in-law turned to him and whispered, thinking I could not hear, "Get that old woman out of the photo." The words sliced through me like broken glass. That old woman. I felt my smile freeze on my face, my hand still reaching toward my son's shoulder. Suspended in midair like I had forgotten how to move. The photographer kept adjusting his lens, oblivious, and the music from the reception hall pounded in my ears. But all I could hear was her voice echoing in my head. Get that old woman out of the photo. That old woman, me. I was that old woman. My throat tightened and I tasted something metallic, like I had bitten my tongue, though I had not. The heat of humiliation crawled up my neck and burned across my cheeks. I could feel every pair of eyes in that moment, even though no one was looking at me, even though the guests were laughing and clinking glasses and celebrating. My son, my Daniel, my baby boy, who I had raised alone after his father walked out when he was 3 years old. He just stood there. He did not defend me. He did not say a word. He glanced at me with this look, this apologetic but helpless look, and then he gently guided me to the side, out of the frame, his hand on my elbow like I was some elderly relative who needed assistance crossing the street. My vision blurred and I blinked hard, refusing to let the tears come. Not here, not now, not in front of her. I stepped back and watched them pose, the happy couple. Her in that expensive white gown that I later found out cost $7,000. Him in his tailored tuxedo looking so handsome and so distant. She smiled, her perfect smile, all white teeth and confidence, her arm wrapped possessively around his waist. She was 26, I was 53. I had done the math 1,000 times since they started dating 2 years ago, trying to make sense of how my son, my intelligent, kind-hearted son, could choose someone so cruel. But standing there, displaced from my own son's wedding photo, I realized the math did not matter. What mattered was that in her eyes, in his silence, I had become invisible. Worse than invisible, I had become an embarrassment. The reception continued around me like I was a ghost. I found my way to the bar, ordered a glass of white wine that I did not really want, and stood in the corner near the exit, watching. My sister Carol found me 20 minutes later. She took one look at my face and knew. Carol always knew. She is 3 years younger than me, 50 years old, but she carries herself like she is timeless, like age is just a number she refuses to acknowledge. She wore a deep purple dress that night, bold and elegant, and her silver hair was cut in a sharp bob that framed her face beautifully. She put her hand on my arm and said, "What happened?" I told her. I repeated the words, and saying them out loud made them real again, made the humiliation fresh. Carol's face went hard, her jaw clenched, and she looked across the room at my new daughter-in-law, who was laughing with her bridesmaids, holding court like a queen. Carol said, "You are not going to let this slide, are you?" It was not really a question. It was a challenge, but in that moment, standing in the corner of that hotel ballroom with the chandelier lights glittering overhead and the sound of the band playing some top 40 song I did not recognize, I did not know what I was going to do. I just knew that something inside me had cracked. Not broken, not yet, but cracked. And through that crack, something cold and clear was starting to seep in. Something that felt like anger, but sharper. Something that felt like clarity. I did not confront anyone that night. I smiled when I needed to smile, hugged my son when he came over to say goodbye before they left for their honeymoon in Hawaii, a trip that cost them $12,000 that I knew Daniel could not really afford on his accountant salary. I kissed his cheek and told him I loved him and that I was happy for him, and I meant it, or at least I meant part of it. I loved him, I always would. But I was not happy. Not for him. Not for me, not for any of this. I drove home alone that night. The same route I had driven 1,000 times. Past the Starbucks on Main Street, past the Target where I used to take Daniel school shopping every August, past the elementary school where he learned to read. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I pulled into my driveway, a modest 2-bedroom house I had bought 15 years ago, after finally saving enough for a down payment, and I sat in the car in the dark for a long time. The porch light was on, the one I always left on so the house would not feel so empty when I came home. I thought about Daniel as a little boy, how he used to run to me when I picked him up from daycare, his face lighting up like I was the most important person in the world. I thought about all the sacrifices I had made, working 2 jobs for years, missing sleep, missing social events, missing my own life so that he could have a better one. And now, at his wedding, I had been shoved aside like I did not matter. That old woman, the words played on a loop in my head. I finally went inside, kicked off my heels that had been pinching my feet all night, and collapsed on the couch. I did not cry. I just sat there in the silence, staring at the wall, feeling something shift inside me that I could not quite name yet. 3 days passed before I heard from Daniel. He texted me from Hawaii, a generic message with a photo of him and his new wife on the beach. Both of them tan and smiling, the ocean bright blue behind them. The text said, "Having an amazing time, love you mom." I stared at that message for a long time. I typed out a response, deleted it, typed another, deleted that too. Finally I just sent back, "Glad you were having fun. Love you too." I did not mention the photo. I did not mention what his wife had said. I did not mention how I had felt, standing there like I was disposable. But I started noticing things I had not let myself see before. I started remembering other moments, small comments, little looks. The time 6 months ago when we all went out to dinner and she had suggested I might want to try a different hairstyle, something more modern. She said, with this smile that did not reach her eyes. The time she bought me a gym membership for my birthday, wrapped up with a card that said, "Never too late to start taking care of yourself." The time she posted a photo on social media of her and Daniel at some event, and I was cropped out of the edge of the image. Even though I had been standing right next to them when the picture was taken, I had brushed all of it off, told myself I was being sensitive, told myself she was young and did not mean anything by it. But now, after the wedding, after being called that old woman, I could not brush it off anymore. I started documenting things. I do not know why, exactly. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was just a need to prove to myself that I was not imagining it. I kept a notebook, a plain black spiral notebook I bought at CVS for $1.99, and I wrote down every incident I could remember. The dates, the comments, the context. I wrote down what she said about my hair. I wrote down the gym membership. I wrote down the cropped photo. I wrote down the wedding. I wrote down everything. It felt good, in a strange way, to see it all laid out in front of me. It made it real. It made it undeniable. Carol came over one evening, about a week after the wedding. She brought Chinese takeout, lo mein and spring rolls from the place down on Oak Street, and we ate on the couch while watching some home renovation show neither of us was really paying attention to. She asked how I was doing, and I told her about the notebook. She asked to see it. I handed it to her and watched her face as she read through the pages, her expression getting darker with each entry. When she finished, she closed the notebook and set it on the coffee table and looked at me. She said, "This is a pattern. This is not you being sensitive. This is abuse." The word hit me hard. Abuse. I had never thought of it that way. Abuse was physical, I thought. Abuse was violence. But Carol shook her head. She said, "Abuse is anything that makes you feel less than what you are. And that is exactly what she is doing to you. She is trying to erase you, to make you small, to push you out of your own son's life. And the worst part is, she is getting away with it because you are letting her." I wanted to argue, but I could not. Because she was right. I had been letting it happen. I had been making excuses, staying quiet, swallowing my hurt, because I did not want to cause problems, did not want to be the difficult mother-in-law, did not want to risk my relationship with Daniel. But where had that gotten me? It had gotten me pushed out of a wedding photo. It had gotten me a son who could not even stand up for me in the most basic way. Carol leaned forward, her elbows on her knees, and she said, "So what are you going to do about it?" And for the first time since the wedding, I felt something other than hurt. I felt a spark of something fierce, something determined. I looked at her and I said, I do not know yet, but I am not going to let this keep happening. That night, after Carol left, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea that had gone cold and I started making a plan. Not a revenge plan, not exactly, but a plan to protect myself, to reclaim my space in my son's life, to stop being invisible. I did not know all the steps yet, but I knew the first one. I needed to talk to Daniel. Really talk to him, not just send polite text messages and pretend everything was fine. I needed to tell him what his wife had said, how it had made me feel, and I needed him to understand that this was not okay. I called him 2 days later, after they got back from Hawaii. I asked if we could meet for coffee. Just the two of us. There was a pause on the line, long enough that I could hear him breathing, could imagine him looking at his wife for approval. Finally he said, "Sure, Mom, how about Saturday morning?" I said yes, and we agreed to meet at the Starbucks near his apartment at 10 a.m. I did not sleep. Well, the night before, I kept rehearsing what I was going to say, how I was going to say it, trying to find the right words that would make him understand without making him defensive. I got to the Starbucks 15 minutes early, ordered a latte I did not really want, and sat at a table by the window, watching people walk by on the street. Daniel showed up exactly at 10, always punctual, always reliable in the small ways. He hugged me and we sat down, and for a few minutes we made small talk. About the honeymoon, about his job, about nothing important. Then I took a breath and I said, I need to talk to you about something that happened at the wedding. His face changed. Just slightly, but I saw it. A flicker of discomfort, a tightening around his eyes. He said, "What is it?" I told him. I told him what his wife had whispered, how she had called me that old woman, how he had guided me out of the photo without saying anything. I told him how it had made me feel, how it had hurt me, how I had been hurt by other things she had said and done over the past 2 years. I tried to keep my voice steady, tried not to cry, tried to be calm and rational. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. He stared down at his coffee cup, turning it slowly in his hands. Then he said, "Mom, I think you misunderstood. She did not mean it like that. She was just stressed about the photos taking too long and she wanted to get a shot of just us. It was not personal." The words felt like a punch. I said, "Daniel, I heard her. I heard exactly what she said. And even if she was stressed, that does not make it okay. You are my son, and she disrespected me and you just stood there." He looked uncomfortable, shifting in his seat. He said, "I did not want to make a scene at my own wedding. And honestly, Mom, you have been kind of sensitive about her from the start. I think you just do not like her, and you are looking for reasons to be upset." I felt the ground shift under me. He was turning it around, making me the problem. I said, "I have never been anything but welcoming to her. I have tried to build a relationship with her, but she has made it very clear that she does not want me around, and you are choosing to ignore that." He sighed, ran a hand through his hair, and said, "Look, I love you, okay. But you have to understand, she is my wife now. She comes first. And if you two cannot get along, I do not know what to tell you. Maybe you just need to give it time, maybe you need to try harder." I stared at him, this man who used to be my little boy, and I realized he was not going to defend me. He was not going to stand up for me. He had made his choice, and it was not me. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor, and I said, "I have tried, Daniel, I have tried more than you know, but I will not beg for respect in my own son's life. When you are ready to see what is really happening, you know where to find me." I walked out of that Starbucks with my head held high, even though inside I was crumbling. I got in my car and I drove, not home, but just drove aimlessly through the city streets, past parks and neighborhoods and strip malls, until I found myself in the parking lot of a Target. I sat there and I finally let myself cry, big heaving sobs that shook my whole body. I cried for the son I felt like I was losing. I cried for the grandmother I might never get to be if they had children. I cried for myself, for feeling so powerless, so dismissed, so old. But when the tears stopped, something else took their place, a cold, clear resolve. I was done being powerless. I was done being dismissed. I was done letting other people define my worth. That old woman, she had called me fine. But this old woman was about to show them all exactly what she was capable of. When I got home from that Target parking lot, my eyes still swollen from crying, I found Carol sitting on my front porch. She had a key to my house, but she was waiting outside, respecting my space like she always did. She took one look at me and said, "It did not go well." I shook my head and unlocked the door, and we went inside. I told her everything Daniel had said, how he had dismissed me, how he had made me feel like I was the problem, how he had chosen his wife over basic decency to his own mother. Carol listened without interrupting, her face getting harder with each sentence. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment, then she said, "You know what this is, right? This is gaslighting. He is making you doubt your own experience, your own reality, and he learned it from her." I had heard the term before, gaslighting, but I had never really understood it until that moment. That was exactly what was happening. I had been there. I had heard what she said. I had felt the humiliation, and yet he was telling me I was wrong, that I was too sensitive, that I had misunderstood. He was rewriting reality to protect his wife and to avoid confrontation. Carol pulled out her phone and started typing. She said, "I am sending you some links. Articles about emotional abuse, about family dynamics, about protecting yourself from toxic people. You need to educate yourself because knowledge is power, and right now you need all the power you can get." The links came through one after another, and I spent the rest of that afternoon reading stories from other women, older women, mothers and mothers-in-law who had been pushed aside, dismissed, erased by their own families. Women who had been called too sensitive, too dramatic, too difficult when all they wanted was basic respect. I was not alone. That realization hit me like a wave. I was not crazy. I was not imagining things. This was real, and it was happening to thousands of women just like me. That evening I went back to my black notebook and I started adding more detail. Not just what happened, but how it made me feel, what the impact was. I wrote down the date of the coffee meeting with Daniel, October 15th, 2024. And I wrote down everything he said, word for word, as best as I could remember. I documented my response, my feelings, the way he had made me doubt myself. I did not know yet what I was going to do with all this information, but something told me it mattered, that it would be important later. The following Tuesday I had my regular appointment with Dr. Patterson, my primary care physician. I had been seeing her for 6 years, ever since I moved to this neighborhood, and she knew me well. During the checkup she asked how I was doing, and usually I said fine, but that day I did not. I told her I was struggling. I told her about the stress, about the situation with my son and his wife, about how I had not been sleeping well, how I felt anxious all the time. She listened carefully, making notes, and then she asked me more questions. Had I lost weight? Yes, about 8 pounds in the past month. Was I having trouble concentrating? Yes, constantly. Did I feel hopeless? Sometimes, yes. Dr. Patterson put down her pen and looked at me directly. She said, "What you are describing sounds like situational depression and anxiety related to ongoing emotional stress. This is not just in your head. This is your body responding to a real threat to your well-being." She wrote me a prescription for a low-dose anti-anxiety medication if I wanted it, but she also said something that stuck with me. She said, "Medication can help with symptoms, but the real problem is the situation itself. You need to address the source of the stress, not just manage your reaction to it." I asked her what she meant, and she said, "You need boundaries. Strong ones. You need to protect yourself from people who are hurting you, even if those people are family, especially if those people are family." She gave me the name of a therapist, Dr. Sarah Chen. who specialized in family dynamics and trauma. She said, "I think you should talk to someone who can help you navigate this. You deserve support." I made the appointment with Dr. Chen before I left the medical building. Something about Dr. Patterson's validation, her acknowledgement that this was real and serious, gave me courage. The first available appointment was not until November 2nd, 2.5 weeks away, but I took it. I needed professional help to understand what was happening and how to protect myself. In the meantime, I started setting small boundaries. Daniel texted me a few days after our coffee meeting, a casual message asking if I wanted to come over for dinner the following weekend. In the past I would have said yes immediately, eager for any chance to see him, to maintain connection. But this time I looked at that text for a long time before responding. I thought about sitting at their dinner table, making polite conversation with a woman who had called me that old woman, pretending everything was fine. I could not do it. Not yet. Not until something changed. I texted back, "Thanks for the invite, but I have plans that weekend." It was not true. I had no plans, but I needed space and I needed him to feel my absence. He responded with a simple "Okay, talk soon." No follow-up. No asking what my plans were. No suggesting another time. It stung, but it also confirmed what I already knew. I was not a priority. Carol invited me to join her book club. She had been asking me for years and I had always said no, always made excuses about being too busy or too tired. But I was trying to build a life that did not revolve around waiting for my son to need me, so I said yes. The book club met every other Thursday evening at a local coffee shop called The Grind, a cozy place with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. There were 7 women in the group, all between 45 and 62 years old. Carol introduced me, and they welcomed me warmly. No judgment, no questions about why I was joining now. That first night we discussed a novel about a woman reinventing her life after divorce. I had not finished the book, but I listened to the conversation, and something about being in that circle of women, hearing them talk honestly about struggles and triumphs and disappointments, made me feel less alone. After the formal discussion ended and we were just chatting over coffee and cookies, one of the women, Linda, asked me how I was doing. She asked it in a way that made it clear she really wanted to know, not just making polite conversation. I hesitated, then I told them a little bit about what was happening with my son and daughter-in-law. I did not go into all the details, but I mentioned the wedding photo incident. The reaction was immediate and visceral. Every woman at that table had a story. Margaret, who was 58, talked about her daughter-in-law, who had excluded her from her grandchildren's birthday parties. Susan, 51, talked about her own son who had stopped calling after he got married. Linda, 62, talked about being told by her daughter that she was too old-fashioned and embarrassing to bring around her new friends. We sat there for an extra hour, past closing time, the owner of the coffee shop wiping down tables around us, but not asking us to leave. We shared stories. We validated each other's pain. We laughed at the absurdity of being made to feel obsolete by our own families. And when I finally left that night, I felt something I had not felt in a long time. I felt seen. I felt heard. I felt like I mattered. Margaret pulled me aside as we were leaving and gave me her phone number. She said, "Call me anytime. I have been where you are and I know how dark it can get. But I also know there is light on the other side. You just have to be willing to fight for it." I saved her number in my phone and I knew I would call her. I knew I needed all the allies I could get. November arrived with cold rain and gray skies. I had my first appointment with Dr. Chen on that Tuesday. Her office was in a converted Victorian house near downtown, painted sage green with white trim, with a small waiting room that felt more like someone's living room than a medical office. Dr. Chen was in her early 40s, petite, with dark hair pulled back in a neat bun and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She invited me into her office and we sat in comfortable chairs facing each other, no desk between us. She asked me to tell her why I was there, and I did. I told her everything. Starting from the beginning of Daniel's relationship with his wife, going through all the small comments and incidents, building up to the wedding and the coffee shop conversation. I showed her my notebook. She read through it carefully, nodding occasionally, making small notes on her own pad. When I finished talking, she was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she said, "I want to validate something for you right away. What you are experiencing is real. It has a name. It is called elder abuse. And it often takes the form of emotional abuse and isolation. The fact that you are only 53 and not elderly in the traditional sense does not matter. Age-based discrimination and abuse can start much younger, especially for women. Our society devalues women as they age, and that creates an environment where this kind of treatment is normalized and dismissed. Hearing a professional name it, categorize it, validate it, made something inside me relax. I was not crazy. This was real." Dr. Chen continued. She said the pattern I was describing, the gradual isolation, the undermining of my perception, the way my son was being conditioned to prioritize his wife's comfort over my well-being, was textbook emotional abuse. She said, the goal of the abuser is to make you doubt yourself, to make you believe you are the problem, and to isolate you from support systems. Your son is likely not consciously participating in abuse. He is probably caught in the middle and is taking the path of least resistance, which unfortunately means sacrificing you to keep the peace with his wife. I asked her what I should do, and she said, first, you keep doing what you are already doing. Document everything. Build your support network. Set boundaries. And second, you accept that you cannot control other people's behavior. You can only control your own response. Your goal is not to change your daughter-in-law or to force your son to see the truth. Your goal is to protect yourself and to build a life that is fulfilling whether or not they are in it. That last part hurt. The idea of building a life without my son in it felt like giving up, like admitting defeat. But Dr. Chun shook her head when I said that. She said, it is not giving up. It is choosing yourself. It is refusing to beg for crumbs of affection and respect. And sometimes, when you stop chasing people, when you stop making yourself small to accommodate their dysfunction, they notice. Sometimes they come back. But you cannot do this hoping they will come back. You have to do this for you, regardless of what they do. I left that appointment with homework. Dr. Chen wanted me to write a letter to my son that I would not send, at least not yet. She wanted me to write down everything I felt, everything I wanted to say, without censoring myself, without worrying about his reaction. She said it was an exercise in clarity, in honoring my own truth. I went home and I wrote that letter. It was 7 pages long, handwritten, full of pain and anger, and love and grief. I told him how proud I was of the man he had become. I told him how much it hurt to be pushed aside. I told him I deserved better. I told him I loved him, but I would not sacrifice myself for his comfort anymore. When I finished writing it, I cried. Then I folded it up and put it in a drawer. Maybe I would send it someday. Maybe I would not. But writing it mattered. Thanksgiving was approaching, and I knew that would be a test. Last year I had hosted, cooking for 2 days straight, making Daniel's favorite dishes, trying to impress his then-girlfriend. This year I did not offer to host. I waited to see if I would be invited to their place. The invitation came via text, not even a phone call. On November 18th, Daniel asked if I wanted to come over for Thanksgiving dinner at 3 p.m. Casual, like it was no big deal. Like the past month of tension and hurt did not exist. I stared at that text for a long time. Part of me wanted to say yes, wanted to pretend everything was fine, wanted to see my son on a holiday. But a bigger part of me, the part that was learning to protect myself, knew I could not do it. Not yet, not without an acknowledgement of what had happened, without a real conversation, without something changing. I texted back, I appreciate the invite, but I am going to spend Thanksgiving with Carol this year. Enjoy your day. His response came quickly. That is too bad. Maybe Christmas then. I did not respond right away. I needed to sit with the emotions that text brought up. Disappointment, relief, sadness, anger, all of it swirling together. Finally I wrote back, "We will see," and I left it at that. Carol was thrilled when I told her I was spending Thanksgiving with her. She said, "Good, you are choosing yourself. That is exactly what you need to be doing." We spent Thanksgiving at her house with her husband Tom and their 2 adult daughters, both in their 20s, both kind and funny and welcoming. It was a loud, chaotic, loving meal, and I laughed more that day than I had in months. No one made comments about my age or my appearance. No one made me feel invisible. I belonged there, and it felt good. But that night, alone in my house, I looked at the photos Carol's daughters had posted on social media. Pictures of all of us around the table, smiling, happy. And then I made the mistake of checking Daniel's social media. He had posted a photo too. Him and his wife, a professionally styled table setting behind them, both of them looking perfect. The caption said, "Thankful for my beautiful wife and our new life together." No mention of me. No acknowledgement that this was his first Thanksgiving as a married man without his mother. I was erased. Completely. I closed the app and I sat in the dark living room, and I let myself feel it, the grief, the loss, the realization that my son was choosing a version of life that did not include me. And then, when I had felt it fully, I made a decision. I was done waiting for him to see what was happening. I was done hoping he would stand up for me. I was going to build my own life, a life so full and rich and meaningful that whether or not he was in it would not define my happiness. That old woman, she had called me. Fine, but this old woman was just getting started. December came with cold wind and early darkness. I threw myself into building the life I had decided I deserved. I joined a yoga class at the community center. Something I had always wanted to try but never made time for. The instructor, a woman named Maya who was maybe 40, had this calm presence that made me feel safe. The first class was hard. My body did not bend the way it used to, and I felt self-conscious, surrounded by younger, more flexible women. But Maya came over during a pose and quietly adjusted my form and said, "Yoga is not about being perfect. It is about showing up for yourself." That phrase stuck with me. Showing up for myself. That was exactly what I was doing. I also started volunteering at the public library on Saturday mornings, helping with their literacy program for adults. It felt good to be useful, to contribute something meaningful, to be around people who appreciated my time and energy. One of the women I tutored, Maria, was 62 and learning to read English after immigrating from Guatemala 5 years ago. She worked as a housekeeper and was determined to pass her citizenship test. Watching her struggle with words and grammar, seeing her frustration and determination, reminded me that everyone has battles. My pain was real, but I was not alone in suffering. That perspective helped. Carol convinced me to update my wardrobe. She said, "You have been dressing like you are trying to disappear, and it is time to take up space again." We went shopping at a boutique downtown, a place I never would have gone into before, because it looked too expensive and too trendy. But Carol pushed me through the door and the owner, a woman in her 50s named Diane, greeted us warmly. She pulled pieces for me to try on, things I would never have chosen for myself. A burgundy wrap dress that hugged my figure. A black blazer with strong shoulders. A pair of dark jeans that actually fit well. When I looked at myself in the mirror wearing that burgundy dress, I barely recognized the woman looking back. She looked confident. She looked alive. She looked like someone who mattered. Diane said, "You have a beautiful figure. Why have you been hiding it?" I did not have a good answer. Somewhere along the way I had started believing that women my age should not draw attention, should not take up space, should fade into the background. But looking at myself in that dress, I thought, why? Why should I disappear? I bought the dress and the blazer and the jeans, and when I wore the dress to book club the next week, the women erupted with compliments. Margaret said, "Look at you. That is the woman who is going to take her life back." My sessions with Dr. Chen continued every week. We talked about codependency, about how I had built my identity around being Daniel's mother, about how losing that role felt like losing myself. She helped me see that I was more than someone's mother. I was a woman with interests and skills and value that existed independent of my relationship with my son. She gave me exercises, small assignments that pushed me out of my comfort zone. One week she told me to do something that scared me. I signed up for a public speaking workshop at the community college. I had always been terrified of speaking in front of groups, but Dr. Chen said, fear is often a sign that something is worth doing. The workshop met for 6 weeks starting in January, and just signing up felt like a victory. Daniel texted occasionally, surface-level messages about work or the weather. I responded politely, but I did not engage deeply. I did not ask to see him. I did not offer to visit. I was waiting for him to actually address what had happened, to acknowledge the hurt, to have a real conversation. But he did not. He seemed content to pretend everything was fine, as long as I played along. I refused to play along. On December 10th, I got a group text. Daniel had created a family group chat with me, Carol, his wife, and her parents. The message said, "We have some exciting news to share. Call tonight at 7 p.m. for a video chat." My stomach dropped. I knew what the news was going to be. Carol called me. Immediately after getting the text, she said, "Are you okay? Do you want me to be there with you when you call?" I said yes. I needed support for whatever was coming. At 7 p.m., Carol and I sat on my couch with my laptop open. We joined the video call, and there they were, Daniel and his wife, both grinning. Her parents were on the call too, a couple in their early 60s who I had met briefly at the wedding. Daniel did not waste time. He said, "We wanted to tell you all together. We are pregnant. The baby is due in July." Everyone on the call erupted with congratulations and excitement. Her parents were crying happy tears. Carol said all the right things. "Congratulations, how wonderful. We are so happy for you." I managed to say, "That is great news, congratulations." But my voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. Daniel's wife. I am going to call her Jessica because I am tired of just calling her his wife. Jessica rubbed her still flat stomach and said, "We are so excited to start our family." Her emphasis on our family felt deliberate, like she was drawing a circle around herself and Daniel and this baby, a circle that did not include me. The call lasted maybe 15 minutes, everyone talking over each other, making plans, asking questions about due dates and doctor appointments and whether they knew the gender yet. They did not know yet. Too early. When the call ended, I closed the laptop and sat in silence. Carol put her hand on my shoulder and said, "Talk to me." I said, "I am going to be a grandmother. I should be thrilled. I should be overjoyed. But all I can think about is how she is going to use this baby to push me even further away." Carol did not argue with me because she knew I was right. Jessica had already shown who she was. A baby would just give her more power, more control, more ways to exclude me. I called Dr. Chen the next morning and asked for an emergency session. She fit me in that afternoon. I told her about the pregnancy announcement, and she listened carefully. Then she said, "This changes things, but it does not have to change your path. You are still building your own life. You are still protecting yourself. The difference now is that there will be a grandchild and you need to decide what boundaries you are willing to set and what battles you are willing to fight." I asked her what she meant, and she said, "In situations like this, where there is clear emotional abuse and manipulation, you have to be strategic. If you want a relationship with your grandchild, you cannot cut off Daniel completely. But you also cannot allow yourself to be treated poorly. You need to document everything, maintain your boundaries, and be prepared for the possibility that they will use the child as leverage against you." It was a hard truth, but I needed to hear it. That week I consulted with an attorney. Not because I was planning to sue anyone, but because I needed to understand my rights as a grandmother. Margaret from book club had given me the name of a family law attorney she had worked with. a woman named Patricia Brennan who specialized in grandparents' rights cases. I made an appointment and met with her on December 18th. Patricia's office was in a modern building downtown, all glass and steel. She was maybe 55, with short gray hair and sharp eyes that did not miss anything. I told her my situation, showed her my documentation, explained the pattern of behavior. She listened and took notes, and when I finished, she said, "I am going to be honest with you. Grandparents' rights in this state are limited. Unless there is abuse or neglect of the child, or unless you have been a primary caregiver, courts are reluctant to override parental decisions about who has access to their children. However, the documentation you have been keeping is smart. If the situation escalates, if they try to completely cut you off without cause, this documentation could be useful." She continued, "My advice to you is this: stay involved as much as they allow. Be the best grandmother you can be when you get the chance. Document any instances where they unreasonably deny you access. Keep all text messages and emails. Do not give them ammunition by being difficult or demanding. Be kind, be present when allowed, and be strategic. And if it comes to it, we can explore legal options. But that should be a last resort." I left her office feeling both relieved and anxious. Relieved to know I had options if things got worse. Anxious because I was preparing for battle. I paid Patricia a retainer of $1,500, money I could barely afford but knew I needed to spend. This was an investment in my future relationship with my grandchild. Christmas approached and I was not invited to spend it with Daniel and Jessica. Instead, I got a text on December 20th saying they were spending Christmas with her family in Ohio and would be gone for a week. No invitation to join. No acknowledgement that this was my first Christmas without my son. Just a casual "here is what we are doing" message. I did not respond right away. I let myself feel the hurt, the exclusion, the reality that I was being systematically removed from his life. Then I made other plans. Carol invited me to spend Christmas with her family again, and I accepted. I also volunteered to work at the community soup kitchen on Christmas morning, serving breakfast to people who had nowhere else to go. It felt meaningful. It felt like choosing purpose over self-pity. On Christmas Eve, I was wrapping gifts for Carol's family when my phone rang. It was Daniel. Actual phone call, not a text. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. He said, "Hey Mom, just wanted to say Merry Christmas. We are at Jessica's parents' house and it has been really nice. How are you?" His voice was casual, like everything was normal. I said, "I am fine. Spending Christmas with Carol." I kept my voice neutral. There was a pause, and then he said, "That is good. I am glad you will not be alone." Another pause. Then he said, "I know things have been kind of weird between us. I just want you to know I love you, and I hope we can all get past this and move forward, especially with the baby coming." His words hit me wrong. Get past this. Like I was holding a grudge over nothing. Like I was the problem that needed to be solved. I took a breath and I said, "Daniel, I love you too. But we cannot move forward without addressing what happened. Your wife disrespected me at your wedding and you did not stand up for me. That hurt me deeply, and it has not been resolved. Until we actually talk about it, really talk about it, things are not going to be okay." He sighed. That sound he used to make when he was a teenager and I had said something that annoyed him. He said, "Mom, that was months ago. Can we please just let it go? It is Christmas. I do not want to fight." I said, "I am not fighting. I am telling you how I feel. And if you cannot hear me, if you cannot acknowledge my pain, then we do not have much to talk about." There was a long silence. I could hear voices in the background, Jessica's family laughing about something. Then Daniel said, "I have to go. We will talk later. Merry Christmas, Mom." And he hung up. I sat there holding the phone, staring at the Christmas tree Carol had helped me decorate, feeling the familiar ache of rejection. But underneath the ache was something else, strength. I had spoken my truth. I had not backed down. I had not pretended everything was fine just to keep the peace. That mattered. Christmas Day was actually lovely. I worked at the soup kitchen from 7 a.m. to noon, serving eggs and pancakes to people who thanked me with genuine gratitude. Then I went to Carol's house for dinner. A chaotic, wonderful meal with her family. Her daughters gave me a gift, a beautiful journal with my initials embossed on the cover. The card said, "For all the stories you have yet to write." I almost cried. These people, who were not even my blood relatives, saw me and valued me more than my own son did. That night, alone in my house, I opened the journal and I started writing. Not documentation this time, just thoughts, feelings, reflections. I wrote about who I had been, who I was becoming, who I wanted to be. I wrote about the pain of the past year, but also about the strength I was discovering. I wrote about the baby coming, and my fear of being excluded, but also my determination to find a way to be part of that child's life. I wrote until my hand cramped, and when I finally stopped, I felt lighter. The week between Christmas and New Year was quiet. I went to yoga. I tutored Maria at the library. I attended book club. I had coffee with Margaret, who was becoming a real friend. She told me about her own battle with her daughter-in-law, how it had taken 3 years, but she now had a good relationship with her grandchildren because she had refused to give up, but also refused to tolerate disrespect. She said, "You have to outlast them. You have to be so consistent, so steady, so undeniably present in healthy ways that eventually they cannot justify excluding you." On New Year's Eve, I did something I had not done in years. I went out. There was a community dance at the recreation center, live band, appetizers, champagne toast at midnight. Carol dragged me there and I wore my burgundy dress and I danced. I danced with Carol and with Tom and with Margaret and with strangers who did not care that I was 53, or that I had gray in my hair, or that I was not young anymore. I danced like I mattered. Because I did. At midnight, when everyone counted down and cheered and hugged, I felt something I had not felt in a long time. Hope, not hope that Daniel would change, or that Jessica would suddenly become kind, but hope that I was going to be okay regardless. That I was building something real and strong in mine, and no one could take that away from me. January brought snow and a fresh start. I began the public speaking workshop at the community college, a 6-week course that met every Thursday evening. The instructor, a retired communications professor named Robert, was in his 60s with a warm smile and a no-nonsense teaching style. There were 12 people in the class, ranging from their 20s to their 50s, all of us terrified for different reasons. The first night Robert said, "Public speaking is not about being perfect. It is about being authentic. When you speak from truth, people listen." I thought about that a lot over the coming weeks. My relationship with Daniel remained surface level. He texted occasionally, updates about the pregnancy, Jessica's morning sickness, their preparations for the baby. I responded politely, but did not engage deeply. I noticed he never asked about my life, never asked what I was doing, or how I was feeling. The conversation was always about him, about them, about the baby. I was an audience, not a participant. Dr. Chun helped me see this pattern clearly. She said, "Notice who does the emotional labor in your relationship. Notice who reaches out, who asks questions, who makes effort. When it is always one-sided, that tells you something important." In mid-January, I had my 3rd speaking assignment for the class. We had to give a 5-minute speech about a challenge we had overcome. I knew immediately what I would talk about. I wrote about the past 6 months, about being called that old woman, about learning to set boundaries, about choosing myself. I practiced in front of my mirror, my voice shaking at first but growing stronger with each run-through. The night of the speech I wore my black blazer and I stood in front of the class and I told my story. Not all the details, but enough to be real. When I finished, the room was quiet for a moment. Then Robert started clapping and the rest of the class joined in. After class, 3 women came up to me. One was about my age. One was younger, maybe 30, and one was older, maybe 65. Each of them said some version of the same thing. Thank you for sharing that. I needed to hear it. The older woman, her name was Dorothy, hugged me and said, I thought I was the only one. My daughter treats me the same way. We exchanged phone numbers. Another ally, another woman who understood. February arrived and with it came Jessica's baby shower. I found out about it through social media, not through a direct invitation. Jessica had posted about it, a cutesy announcement with pink and blue balloons and the date. February 22nd, at 2 p.m. My stomach sank. I had not been invited. Carol saw the post too and called me immediately. She said, this is deliberate. This is her making a statement. I knew she was right, but it still hurt. I waited 2 days to see if an invitation would come. It did not. Finally, I texted Daniel. I kept it simple. I said, I saw that Jessica is having a baby shower on the 22nd. Am I invited? The response took 6 hours to come. He said, it is just a small thing with her close friends and family. We did not think you would want to come, since it is mostly her people. I read that text 5 times, feeling the anger build with each read. We did not think you would want to come. He was making decisions for me, excluding me and framing it like he was doing me a favor. I called Dr. Chen. She had given me her emergency number for situations exactly like this. She answered and I told her what had happened. She listened and then she said, this is a turning point. You can let this go and accept being excluded, or you can stand up for yourself. But if you stand up, you need to be prepared for conflict. You need to be ready for them to get defensive, to call you difficult, to possibly pull away even more. The question is, what are you willing to tolerate? I thought about it for a long time. Then I made a decision. I texted Daniel back. I said, I am your mother, and this is my first grandchild. I absolutely want to be at the baby shower. I would appreciate being included. His response was fast this time. He said, I will talk to Jessica. 2 hours later he called me. He sounded stressed. He said, Jessica is really uncomfortable with you being there. She feels like you do not support our marriage and she does not want negative energy at her shower. The words hit me like ice water. I said, Daniel, I have never done anything to Jessica except try to build a relationship with her. If she is uncomfortable around me, it is because she knows how she has treated me, and she does not want to face it. This is not about negative energy. This is about control. He was quiet, and then he said, can you please just let this one go? For me, please. I could hear the exhaustion in his voice, the pleading. Part of me wanted to give in, to avoid the conflict, to keep the peace. But I thought about everything Dr. Chen had taught me, everything I had learned over the past months. I thought about that old woman and what she was becoming. I said, no, Daniel, I cannot let this go. This is my grandchild too, and I will not be erased. I am coming to that shower, whether Jessica likes it or not. If she has a problem with me, we can address it like adults. But I am done being excluded from major family events. He said, Mom, please do not do this. You are going to make everything worse. I said, I am not making anything worse. I am standing up for myself. If that makes me difficult in your eyes, then so be it. There was a long pause and then he said, fine, come to the shower. But do not expect Jessica to be happy about it. And he hung up. My hands were shaking, but I felt powerful. I had drawn a line. I had refused to be pushed out. Carol came over that evening and I told her what had happened. She high-fived me and said, that is my girl. Now we need to make sure you show up to that shower looking absolutely amazing and acting with complete grace. We are going to kill them with kindness and class. The day of the shower, I wore a soft blue dress, elegant and appropriate. Carol came with me for moral support. We arrived exactly on time with a carefully chosen gift. A beautiful handmade baby blanket I had found at a local craft fair, soft yellow with delicate embroidery. The shower was at Jessica's parents' house, a large suburban home with a perfectly manicured lawn. We rang the doorbell, and Jessica's mother answered. She looked surprised to see me, then quickly rearranged her face into a polite smile. She said, "Oh, hello, come in." The living room was full of women, maybe 25 of them, all chatting and laughing. The room went quiet when I walked in. Jessica was sitting in a chair decorated with ribbons and balloons, clearly the guest of honor throne. She saw me and her face went tight. Daniel was in the kitchen and he came out when he heard the silence. He looked tired and stressed. He said, "Hi Mom, thanks for coming." His voice was flat. I walked over to Jessica with my gift and my best smile. I said, "Congratulations, Jessica. I am so happy for you both." I handed her the gift. She took it with a forced smile and said, "Thank you." Then she turned to the woman next to her and started a conversation, effectively dismissing me. Carol and I found seats in the back of the room. Several women stared at us, clearly aware of some tension, but not sure what it was about. I held my head high. The shower proceeded with games and food and gift opening. I participated when appropriate, laughed at the right moments, clapped when expected. I was the picture of graciousness, but I also noticed things. I noticed how Jessica's friends whispered and glanced at me. I noticed how Jessica avoided looking in my direction. I noticed how Daniel hovered near his wife, protective and anxious. And I noticed one other thing. Jessica's mother, a woman named Patricia, kept watching me with an expression I could not quite read. During the gift opening, Jessica opened my blanket. She held it up briefly, said, "This is nice, thank you," and set it aside quickly, moving to the next gift. No acknowledgement of the craftsmanship, no appreciation for the thoughtfulness, just a dismissive brush-off. I felt the sting, but I kept my face neutral. Carol squeezed my hand under the table. After the gifts were opened and people were mingling, Patricia approached me. She said, "Can we talk privately for a moment?" I followed her to a quiet corner of the house. She looked uncomfortable. She said, "I want to apologize for the awkwardness today. Jessica told me you might cause problems, and that is why you were not originally invited. But watching you today, I do not see someone causing problems. I see someone being excluded unfairly." Her words surprised me. I said, "Thank you for saying that. I have tried very hard to build a relationship with your daughter, but she has made it clear she does not want me in her life or in Daniel's life." Patricia nodded slowly. She said, "Jessica can be very particular about things. She has always been that way. I love my daughter, but I am not blind to her faults. I hope you will not give up on having a relationship with your grandchild. That baby needs as much love as possible." I thanked her and we rejoined the party. As Carol and I were leaving, Daniel walked us to the door. He said quietly, "Thank you for coming and for being civil. I know that was hard." I looked at him, my son, this man I had raised and sacrificed for, and I said, "I will always show up for my grandchild, Daniel, always, even when it is hard, even when I am not wanted, because that is what family does. I hope someday you remember that." We drove home in silence for a while. Then Carol said, "You were magnificent today. You showed them exactly who you are. Now they cannot say you are difficult or dramatic. You were nothing but gracious. That matters." I nodded, but inside I felt hollow. I had won a battle, but I was exhausted from the war. March came with warmer weather and cherry blossoms. My public speaking class ended with a final presentation. I spoke about ageism and the invisibility of older women. I spoke for 8 minutes, confident and clear, and when I finished the room erupted in applause. Robert came up to me after and said, "You have found your voice. Do not lose it." I promised him I would not. Daniel texted occasionally with pregnancy updates. Jessica was having a boy. They had decided on a name, Oliver. They were preparing the nursery. I responded with appropriate excitement, but the texts felt transactional. I was being kept informed but not included. Dr. Chen helped me manage my expectations. She said, "For now, showing up and being present is enough. Plant seeds. Be consistent. Let time show them who you really are. In late March, I got a call from Patricia, Jessica's mother. She said, "I hope this is not overstepping, but I wanted you to know that I talked to Jessica about including you more. She is resistant, but I am working on her. I think when the baby comes, things might shift. Babies have a way of softening people." I appreciated the gesture, but I was not holding my breath. I had learned not to expect change from people who did not want to change. April brought rain and restlessness. I was building this new life, this full, rich life with friends and activities and purpose. But there was still a Daniel-shaped hole in it. A grandchild-shaped hole. I missed my son. I missed the relationship we used to have. But I also knew I could not go back to who I used to be. The woman who made herself small, who accepted crumbs, who disappeared when convenient. One evening in late April, I was at book club and Margaret asked how I was doing with everything. I told her honestly. I said, "I am stronger than I have ever been, but I am also heartbroken. Both things are true." She nodded and said, "That is grief. You are grieving the son you thought you had, the relationship you thought you would have. That grief is real, and it is okay to feel it. But do not let it stop you from living. You are doing everything right. Keep going." May arrived with flowers and sunshine and a text from Daniel that changed everything. It said, "Jessica went into early labor. We are at the hospital. I will keep you updated." My heart stopped. Early labor. She was only 34 weeks. I texted back immediately. "Is everything okay? Do you need anything? Can I come?" The response took an hour. He said, "Doctors say baby will be fine but needs to be monitored in NICU for a few weeks. We are scared but hopeful. Jessica does not want visitors right now. Just family. Just family." The words cut deep. I was not family. Not in their definition. I sat on my couch and cried angry, frustrated tears. Carol came over when I called her. She said, "Give it a day. Let them get through the immediate crisis. Then push back if you need to." She was right. This was not the time for a fight. This was the time to wait. And pray and hope my grandson was okay. The next day Daniel sent a photo. A tiny baby in an incubator, wires and tubes everywhere, but alive. The text said, "Oliver Daniel, born May 12 at 11:37 p.m., 4 pounds 6 ounces. He is a fighter." I stared at that photo for a long time. My grandson. This tiny perfect person who I already loved fiercely. And I was not allowed to meet him, not yet. Maybe not ever, if Jessica had her way. But looking at that photo, I made a promise. I was going to fight. For this child, I was going to be part of his life, whatever it took. That old woman was about to become the most determined grandmother they had ever seen. Oliver stayed in the NICU for 3 weeks. During that time, I texted Daniel every day asking for updates, sending encouragement, offering help. Sometimes he responded, sometimes he did not. I sent meals to their house through a delivery service. Easy things they could reheat. I sent a care package with snacks and magazines and a journal for Jessica to record Oliver's milestones. I got a brief thank you text from Daniel, but nothing from Jessica. I was being strategically kind, planting seeds like Dr. Chen had advised, showing up even when I was not welcomed. On June 2nd, Daniel texted that Oliver was being released from the NICU, and they were bringing him home. I asked if I could visit and meet my grandson. The response was what I expected. "Not yet, Mom. Jessica needs time to adjust and recover. Maybe in a few weeks." I wanted to scream. I wanted to drive to their house and demand to see my grandchild, but I remembered Patricia Brennan's advice. Do not give them ammunition. Be kind. Be present when allowed. Be strategic. So I waited. I sent a gift, a collection of board books and a soft stuffed elephant. I texted congratulations and patience. 1 week passed, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I saw photos on social media. Jessica's family holding Oliver, visiting, celebrating. Her mother posted a photo captioned, "Best grandma moment ever." The exclusion was deliberate and painful. Carol kept me sane. She reminded me daily that this was not about me. This was about Jessica's need for control, and that eventually the truth would show itself. In late June, I made a decision. I was going to show up. Not aggressively, not demandingly, but I was going to stop waiting for permission to be a grandmother. On a Saturday morning, I drove to their apartment with a small gift, a handmade photo album I had created with pictures of Daniel as a baby and child. The album was for Oliver, so he could know his father's history, his roots, his family. I rang the doorbell. Daniel answered. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, his hair uncombed. He said, "Mom, what are you doing here?" I kept my voice calm and warm. I said, "I came to meet my grandson. I have been patient and respectful of Jessica's needs, but it has been almost 6 weeks and I cannot wait anymore. I need to see him, Daniel. I am his grandmother." Daniel looked torn, glancing back into the apartment. Then Jessica appeared behind him, Oliver in her arms. She looked tired too, but her face hardened when she saw me. She said, "We told you we would let you know when we were ready for visitors." I looked at her directly and I said, "Jessica, I understand this is a difficult time, but I am not a visitor. I am Oliver's grandmother. I have been more than patient. I have respected your space. But I am here now and I would like to meet my grandson. Please." The word please tasted bitter, but I said it anyway. There was a tense silence. Daniel looked at Jessica, clearly waiting for her to decide. And in that moment, I saw everything clearly. He had given her all the power. He had abdicated his responsibility to his own mother in favor of keeping his wife happy. Jessica finally said, "Fine. 10 minutes. Do not wake him up." She stepped aside and I entered their apartment. It was small but tidy. Baby items everywhere. I walked to where Jessica stood. Holding Oliver and I looked down at his tiny face. He was perfect, absolutely perfect. I felt tears well up and I did not try to stop them. I said, "Can I hold him?" Jessica hesitated, then carefully transferred him to my arms. The weight of him, the warmth, the tiny fingers curled into fists. I was holding my grandson. Finally, I sat on their couch and just looked at him, memorizing every detail. His dark hair, his button nose, his delicate eyelashes. I whispered, "Hi Oliver, I am your grandma. I have been waiting so long to meet you. I am going to love you so much." Daniel watched from across the room, his expression unreadable. Jessica stood with her arms crossed, clearly uncomfortable. I did not care. I had these 10 minutes and I was going to savor every second. When Oliver started to fuss, Jessica immediately reached for him. She said, "I need to feed him. You should go." I handed him back reluctantly and stood. I looked at Daniel and I said, "Thank you for letting me meet him. I hope I can visit again soon." He nodded but did not commit to anything. As I left, I turned back and said, "I made a photo album for Oliver. Pictures of you as a baby, Daniel. I thought he should know his history." I left it on the table by the door. I drove home crying, but they were not entirely sad tears. I had met my grandson. I had held him. I had looked into his eyes and made him a promise that I would fight for him, that I would be part of his life, that he would know his grandmother loved him. That was a start. It was not enough, but it was a start. Over the next 2 months, I visited 3 more times. Each visit had to be negotiated, scheduled, limited. Jessica controlled every interaction, hovering, watching, cutting visits short when she decided I had been there long enough. But I showed up every time with grace and patience. I brought useful gifts, diapers and wipes and baby food. I offered to help with laundry or dishes. I asked about their needs. I was relentlessly kind and useful. During one visit in August, while Jessica was in the bathroom, Daniel said quietly, "I know this has been hard on you. I appreciate you being patient." I looked at him and I said, "Daniel, I love you and I love Oliver, but this situation is not okay. Your wife has been excluding me and disrespecting me for 2 years and you have allowed it. That needs to change." He looked uncomfortable and said, "It is complicated, Mom." I said, "No, it is not. It is actually very simple. You stand up for the people you love. You set boundaries. You do not let anyone, even your wife, treat your mother poorly." He did not respond. Jessica came back, and the conversation ended. In September, Patricia called me. She said, "I have been watching how Jessica treats you, and I have been talking to her about it. She is very defensive, but I think she is starting to see that she has been unfair. I am going to keep pushing." I thanked her. Having an ally inside their family camp was valuable. Patricia understood that Oliver needed all his family, not just one side. October brought cooler weather and a breakthrough. Daniel called me. Actual phone call. He said, "Would you want to babysit Oliver this Saturday? We need a few hours to run errands, and Jessica's parents are out of town." My heart leaped. I said, "Absolutely, yes. What time?" He gave me the details, and I spent the rest of the week preparing. I bought age-appropriate toys. I studied infant care videos, even though I had raised a child myself. I wanted to be perfect. Saturday came and they brought Oliver to my house. Jessica looked nervous. She gave me a list of instructions: feeding schedule, nap times, emergency contacts. I listened patiently and assured her I would follow everything exactly. When they left, I was alone with my grandson for the first time. 4 hours, just me and Oliver. We played, I fed him, I sang to him, I read him books, I took photos, but I did not post them on social media. I was being careful, respectful. When Daniel and Jessica returned, Oliver was happy and fed and clean. Jessica looked surprised. She said, "Thank you." It was the first genuinely kind thing she had said to me in 2 years. After that day, things shifted slightly. I was asked to babysit again 2 weeks later. Then again, slowly I was being allowed into Oliver's life. Not as much as I wanted, not without restrictions, but more than before. I did not push. I accepted what was offered, and I continued to be reliable and helpful. Dr. Chen reminded me that progress is not always linear. Sometimes you move forward in inches, not miles. In November, on Thanksgiving, I was invited to their apartment for dinner. It was awkward and tense, but we got through it. I brought a pie and a gift for Oliver, and I was polite to Jessica. We did not have any deep conversations, but we coexisted peacefully. That night, driving home, I realized something. I was not waiting for my old life to come back. I was not waiting for Daniel to suddenly become the son I had raised. I was building something new, a relationship with my grandson. A life that was full, even with the limitations. A version of myself that was stronger than the woman who had been pushed out of a wedding photo 17 months ago. December came and I was invited to Oliver's first Christmas. I arrived with gifts and found a room full of people, both families mixing, chaos and joy and laughter. I held Oliver and watched him grab at the wrapping paper, and I felt something I had not felt in a long time. Peace. Not perfect peace. Not the life I had imagined. But peace nonetheless. On Christmas night, as I was leaving, Daniel walked me to my car. He said, "Mom, I want to say something. I have been thinking a lot about everything that has happened. About how I handled things. About how I let you down. I am sorry. I should have stood up for you. I should have set boundaries with Jessica. I was scared of conflict and I took the easy way out, and that was wrong. You did not deserve to be treated that way." I looked at my son and I saw genuine remorse. I said, "Thank you for saying that. It means a lot." He continued, "Jessica and I have been in couples counseling. We are working on communication and boundaries. She is starting to understand that she has been controlling and unfair. It is a process, but we are trying. I do not expect you to forgive everything right away, but I hope we can rebuild our relationship." I felt tears in my eyes. I said, "I want that too. I want you in my life, and I want to be in Oliver's life. But Daniel, things cannot go back to how they were. I am not the same person I was before. I have learned to stand up for myself, and I will not accept being treated poorly again. Not by anyone. He nodded and said, I understand. I respect that. We hugged, and I drove home feeling something close to hope. As the new year approached, I reflected on everything that had happened. That old woman, that phrase had been meant to diminish me, to make me invisible, to push me aside. Instead, it had awakened something fierce in me. It had forced me to examine my life, to build boundaries, to find my voice, to become someone I actually respected. I was 54 years old. I had gray hair and wrinkles, and I was not young anymore. But I was also stronger, braver, more alive than I had been in years. I thought about all the women I had met along the way. Carol and Margaret and Dorothy and Linda and Maria. Women who had been dismissed and devalued and pushed aside because of their age. Women who had fought back, who had refused to disappear, who had built beautiful lives despite the obstacles. We were not that old woman. We were warriors. We were survivors. We were women who had earned every year, every wrinkle, every gray hair. On New Year's Eve, I wrote in my journal. I wrote about gratitude. Gratitude for the pain that had pushed me to grow. Gratitude for the people who had supported me. Gratitude for the strength I had discovered. Gratitude for my grandson and for the relationship I was building with him. And gratitude for myself, for not giving up, for choosing my own worth over the comfort of being small. I looked at the woman in the mirror that night, wearing my burgundy dress, preparing to go to another community dance. I looked at the lines around my eyes, the silver in my hair, the woman I had become. And I said out loud, you are not that old woman. You are remarkable, you are strong, you are enough, and I believed it. If you are reading this and you have ever been made to feel invisible because of your age, because of your appearance, because society has decided you are no longer valuable, I want you to know something. You are not alone. Your pain is real. Your worth is not determined by others. And it is never too late to stand up for yourself, to set boundaries, to build a life that honors who you are. You are not too old. You are not too much. You are exactly enough. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. That old woman, she is a myth. You are powerful. Remember that.